Oh.
And we are live. And predictably, there are no viewers.
We're
That's
so
okay.
popular.
That's okay. All right. Well, we are here to discuss This is Light of the Projector. We're here to discuss The Barbarian, probably one of my favorite horror movies of last year. And joining me, we have Jolly Leftist and Comrade Cutiepie. Thank you both for joining me tonight.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you for having me. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I don't remember whether I saw this. I think I might have told you to see this movie originally, like a couple months ago, and it really threw me for a loop the first time. It's super creepy and a different kind of horror movie. I don't know, just like your overall impressions. Again, like spoilers are cool. Um, what did you? What do you make of this as just being like a horror movie, forgetting all the cool themes we'll get into, just like as a movie? Did it work for you?
Hell yeah. It was really original, the plot. So for horror movies, that's really important. That's almost like what makes a good one these days is how original can you be with the plot. Also, what really struck me as original with this specific movie, I really liked Tess, the leading lady. She is a very good leading lady for horror, like how Scream Queens have come, how far they have come. Like she's practical, she's logical, she like thinks about how to deal with the monster in a pragmatic fashion. Like think about The Last House on the Left or the Chainsaw Massacre. Bitches just screaming, running around. He's like a different type, and I really like that.
I mean, she's logical most of the time, but then she has like a whole morality issue where she like just runs into the dungeon. She's like, "All right, I'm gonna come save you."
Empathy.
It's like, get the fuck out of there, dude.
Yeah, she's got the hero complex going. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I think she definitely, I think the hero complex actually that makes perfect sense, and it's she wants to be the savior, but I mean, she doesn't know. AJ's the guy played by Justin Long. She doesn't know like what he is, his background. She doesn't know he's this total douchebag. So she's just saving another person. Like I suspect maybe if she knew what he was all about, maybe she'd have second thoughts.
I wonder that myself. If she knew, would she have gone back?
Yeah, because he didn't seem like a big actor. Like he was seeming like he was an actor in Hollywood, but he wasn't exactly a movie star. So it's not like people were going to recognize him,
Yeah, there's the scene he went to the storage facility and that the clerk didn't recognize him and he was all annoyed. So they kind of made a tip off to his fame level.
Yeah, I didn't catch that, but that makes sense.
It gave me like the character gave me like huge like Drake Bell vibes from like Drake and Josh.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So funny.
The
whole sex scandal too in like Latin America a couple years ago.
Drake. I think so. I mean, he had like a whole thing where he like ended up like maybe was gonna go to jail. I didn't really care a whole lot about it.
What? Just kidding.
Yeah, but I think like going into I think what for me, I think this maybe we'll get into some of the things about the movie itself, but for me, any good horror movie gives you sort of you think of movies sometimes as sort of like the sort of like three different phases or three different sections. I feel like this movie, that the long amount of time you got before you saw the title credit for The Barbarian, I think it was like 40 minutes, but you were not at all bored, or there wasn't that much humor like you sometimes get in a horror movie, that good horror movies. But I think it like had just enough intrigue for me that it was like I didn't feel, I just said bored. I didn't feel like I was waiting for. I mean, I was waiting for something to drop,
Yeah. No, stories that take their time to develop are usually the best ones, and this is a classic example.
Yeah.
I mean,
agreed.
it kind of like felt like it was like more than one movie, kind of like meshed together, just because of like how distinct the differences are between like each act.
Yeah.
Because the first act goes on for like basically like what is it, like almost like 30-40 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's almost 40 actually.
Like nothing happens and then until like you're down there and shit is going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when
Yeah.
Keith gets offed, I feel
Yeah.
like that's the end of the first act. If we're gonna talk about
Exactly.
it, like in that sort of context.
And then as soon as that happens, it's like there's a very like immediate switch to like everything's fine, don't worry about it. Like we're driving around in California, wherever the fuck that guy is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
It definitely gave you. Yeah, it definitely gave you that. Like you're literally in like this terrible neighborhood in Detroit in like a dungeon cave something or other. Yeah, and then you're like in sunny California. Because in the first part of the movie, there really isn't much. The only outdoor scene is when she drives to her interview. You know, like everything is inside. It's very contained.
You mean like the
Yeah.
settings?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
I mean,
true.
I made sure that I came into it with like as little knowledge about it as possible. I mean, I'm terrible with horror movies, but for some reason this didn't really get me. But the whole time, like in the beginning, I was like writing notes about like the first guy. What is it, Keith? Right?
Yeah, Keith.
I was like writing notes about the first guy. I was like, I'll give you like I literally go, man seems pushy at first, very awkward. Seems like he wants to get laid, you know. And then I was like, after 20 minutes, I was like, all right, maybe he's not that bad. Maybe he's not a bad guy. I don't know.
Well, I think that like is a perfect segue to, I feel like probably could easily be seen as like the number one theme of the movie is you sort of have act one, which is, you know, until Keith gets killed. And then the second half where you have AJ as like the second, really the only other main male character. And like at first glance, you're like, oh, well, Keith is kind of a nice guy, you know, as you get to know him. But AJ, like off the bat, he's just an ass. But when I feel like when you dig a little deeper, they're both not great. You know, I feel like Keith is kind of taking advantage of a situation. And I actually have, that's a lot to say, but I have one curiosity is Keith seemed to know this documentary that Tess had been, or was interviewing with the director and seemed to have this connection. But I wondered if that was like if he was lying, like if, but I guess that's kind of a hard pull out of nowhere to know this random documentary.
Well, as far as Keith is concerned, in watching the beginning, I, for one, would not have stayed in the house. When he's like, oh, you can stay here. Yeah, swerve. 100% swerve. So right off the bat, they set like the writing and the way they told the story as a female person, I felt uncomfortable and I felt her apprehension. So I thought that was good. And Keith, like what you were saying, Evan, I don't know if he's all that great either. I thought that he might have been a representation of a certain spectrum of toxic masculinity, whereas AJ is obviously one spectrum, but Keith is another one. He's the nice guy, you know. She's trying to explain that she was a little nervous about staying, and he's all like, "What? Do I look like a monster? Like, don't play, dude. Don't do that. Like, you know why she's nervous. Like, what? That smells like not all men." / he played Pennywise, so he'd be looking creepy.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I think he you know, he was clearly pressuring her in a way that like and it's funny, like all the little like cues you think of, like because I also came into this movie knowing nothing about it. So I had no idea what the horror kind of like the reveal was going to be. But I felt like he was definitely pressuring her to stay, you know, like he wasn't taking no for an answer. And as we hear later, when AJ is at the bar with his friend in downtown Detroit and he's asking him like what happened with this woman, he's like, oh, I didn't, you know, I'm persistent. I didn't take no for an answer. So it's kind of like the same thing. It's just kind of a degree right?
Yeah, I didn't even catch.
He was like, it just took a little convincing, is all. I think was exactly what he said,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Blurred consent and two different spectrums.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's, and I think obviously this movie came out in 2022, probably was filmed, a year or two before. So given the time frame of when, a lot of the Me Too movement, I feel like they were clearly sliding that in, but not in a way that felt, I mean, it was obvious, but it didn't feel forced in my view.
It was well done. And I think with the Me Too movement nod or homage, whatever, was when Justin Long's character was all saying, like, is it like me losing my reputation and my career that's not sad or something along those lines on the phone with his mother?
Yeah, he sounded like a charming individual when he was having that conversation.
It's like a cliche, right off of, like 4chan or something. It's like, I've heard it a million times. Not me.
Yeah, I mean, at first when he came up, I was like, I mean, I don't know. People give curveballs all the time. I won't assume that he's a rapist. So like my notes, it literally goes new character ? AJ. I don't know. And it goes maybe rapist, and then the next scene happens, and I just go rapist. Yeah.
He was a character. They wrote him so well.
And I don't know. I feel like Justin Long as that character kind of, was pretty good. I don't feel like I hadn't seen a movie with him in quite a while. I mean, I know he's
him.
like he's usually, this isn't usually his character. He's usually like actually the nice guy.
Yeah.
So it was kind of funny to see him as this.
You remember him in Galaxy Quest? That was his debut film.
Oh yeah. Galaxy Quest was great.
I love that movie.
But yeah, the other thing I think as part of maybe the, you talked about when Tess comes in, she's feeling uncomfortable. I think it's safe to say that, I as a man watching this movie have a different, perspective of it, but I felt uncomfortable for her. Like there was all these weird tension moments. When they were washing the sheets and they kept showing the laundry machine. It was like such a weird but cool shot too. I felt like all of the shots down the hallway were really awesome, but I just felt like the discomfort for her, and I think that's probably what women probably experience all the time, and I think it's rarely acknowledged.
I think the cinematographer did that on purpose.
Yeah, I would agree that they did it on purpose for sure, because it's like her room is like down the hall from her like basically her main exit out of there, and he is sleeping on the couch between the exit and her. You know what I mean? So like I feel like the shot kind of shows like the distance that it would like really feel like if you're looking down that hallway trying to get out of there.
Yeah, and he's like this obstacle.
Yeah, the weirdest part, I didn't catch it at first on like the first watch, was when he was like, yeah, I didn't pour any because I thought you would think it was weird and you wouldn't drink any if you didn't see me pour it myself. And I mean, like, kind of like implying that like he assumed that she would think that he was gonna like drug her. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then he come later being like, why were you scared? I'm not scared. Yeah.
Well, it's funny when he was making the tea initially, I was thinking like, oh, is he gonna drug her? Like that was my immediate reaction, just because of the feeling of the scene is like she has this constant, her face is constantly just, you can just like see the fear and the apprehension until he mentions that documentary that he had seen. And then like all of a sudden, like she relaxes, she drinks some wine and she like has a good time. It's such a, I don't know. Like I feel like this scene is relatable, not because I've been in the scene, but I can understand it as in other movies, or like seeing it in real life. You're like out somewhere and you kind of see two people on a date and it's like really uncomfortable, and then like you have a drink of wine, or like, oh well, we can have a conversation now.
Yeah, there's definitely like a super drastic like release of tension at like one point in that act.
In the
Yeah.
wild, the catalyst.
Yeah. Yeah. I was trying to think of what I was going to mention after sort of I think I wrote down like the emotion sort of turns, like her apprehension kind of slowly fades a little bit, but she's still kind of unclear. And then, I mean, we can maybe not skip to, but kind of flip to the evening. And the thing about, I mean, great horror movies is you have like, doors that open and close. I feel like this has those perfect little moments. Like her door is open when she's sleeping, and you're like, oh, is there someone in there? Is he actually the killer or the whatever you want to call it? So
I thought he was. I thought Keith was a bad guy until he got murked.
oh, so you even when he went down there, you thought he was
I
like
thought he was
leading
the
her.
bad guy all the way until he got murked, to be honest with you. But
Yeah, I thought he was like sort of trying to like lure her down there
I thought that was his mattress.
because when she goes down there, nothing is really like bad happening. Like there's no real like you can tell that like there's bad shit down that hallway, but it doesn't seem like it's very like immediate of a threat. But like when he goes down there and then she goes down after him, like you can like you already know there's at least one person down that hallway. Like she could totally like get like totally fucked. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, that's true. I was trying to like think back because I've seen it with I think I've seen it 3 or 4 times. I watched it a couple nights ago before this, and I'm trying to like picture because like it's one of those things that sometimes when you watch a movie and you thinking back on it, you're like, oh, of course I knew that was going to be the term, but like no, you didn't know that shit.
Yeah,
And I don't think I did too. I think I still thought he was. I thought maybe he wasn't the killer, but he was like luring her to the killer. I think that's was my perception.
When the monster came out, I was like, whoa, because I really thought Keith was about to be the villain. And like,
yeah, I 100% thought that he was the landlord that like double booked it like on purpose. I
thought he was diabolical, bro.
And you know what's weird that I was just thinking? This is like skipping ahead when AJ enters the picture. He goes to the place to pick up the key for the place, and they didn't have any record of these reservations. It's like, are they just like, is it just supposed to say like they don't, these like Airbnb landlord types things are just so disorganized and a total shit show that they didn't even know there was multiple guests staying there?
Possibly. I don't remember taking notes or notice of this aspect.
I know that's kind of it's not really necessary to the plot to it, but I think I don't know. I think what was I going to mention here? I don't think I had anything else related to sort of the class aspect, but I mean it definitely is showing the whole scene with AJ and his mom on the phone and his whole character arc. I feel like it's very much weaving in like just a general sense of patriarchy. I know we're like 20 minutes in and no one has mentioned the word capitalism. Shame on us. But I'm only
that's
kidding.
for Act 2, ladies and gentlemen. No.
Yes, Act 2. Yes. We have to have the title sequence or the title screen. But I feel like I noted down just like being like a very these are things that are just kind of expected and are not these kind of themes could be in another movie that's not a horror movie, and you just kind of accept them as part of, or most people would just kind of accept them as like the norms of society. Like some guys are assholes and some guys are like the nice guy. And I feel like it's just our expectation of patriarchal, structure that tells us that that's how it goes.
Yep. It's nice to see it being depicted as what it truly is, a horror.
Yes. I mean, I think we discussed this in our episode on Candyman, is that, the horror of capitalism being depicted in horror movies, I feel like is like almost like the perfect genre for those things, because inherently a horror movie is scary and it can bring those themes in, right? Was it during that episode?
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
I don't know. But yeah, so I thought I'd mention that, but I think, we're kind of at the point now where Keith, I guess Keith now has gone down, but the conversation where she wants to leave and he's like, "Oh, I just want to go see it." I feel like this was a first of like a couple different specific scenes where like women are not to be believed. They're hysterical, crazy people who, if they say there's something wrong, it's actually not true. Like he doesn't take her word for it. That
If he
there's
took
like
her word for it, there'd be no movie.
right.
They would have left it. Everyone would have been fine.
Yeah, it would have been a 30-minute short story, I guess.
But no.
But yeah, no, that's true. That's true. But yeah, this his constant like his emotion of just being, oh, but you know, I don't remember the exact dialogue he says. Let's see if I wrote it down. No, I didn't write it down, but he's like, oh, but I need to see this. He's like constantly going back and be like, oh, I need to go look and see this room. He's like, oh, maybe it's just a room.
I feel like I remember her being like, there's a bed and a camera. And he's like, why would there be a bed and a camera? What? Because someone makes snuff films down there. Like, get it together. Let's leave.
Well, I mean, and this dude is like from the area. He's scouting. He's clearly in was later made obvious to be a very bad part of town. Why would that be so surprising? There was some like shady ass shit happening in that basement.
Which is why I thought he was in on it until the very end.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty good assumption, to be honest.
He was too naive.
Yeah. I mean, she's packing up all her stuff and she wants to go, and then she feels like, I think now, which I think is one of a few instances where she feels I don't want to say remorse, but she feels some sense of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Survivor's guilt?
What's that?
Survivor's guilt?
Yeah, or something like that. I mean, I guess it's like a common, kind of tropey type of thing in like a horror movie. Like someone could be in danger, so rather than just like getting the hell out of there, saving herself, she goes back. Like she has some empathy for him. She likes him a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I commend her for it. I don't know if I do the same thing. It's hard to say until you're there, but
I can see myself getting down to the basement, down like past and to that like extra door, like where they like discovers that it goes even deeper. And then I'd be like, all right, sorry, bro. Like you decided to go down there. I didn't. So like, I got to get out. Like I would get down far enough, but like shit like that. Nope. No.
Yeah, the cave.
The creepy cave tunnel.
Yeah, exactly.
A whole network. There was a catacomb under that house, guys.
Yeah, which also is like an interesting thing that was built under there. I was like trying to figure out if it
city code, dude. Can't be up to code.
No. That landlord AJ would lose that house if they came out there and inspected.
Yeah, dude. His property taxes are about to go.
Well, that like 100% goes over so many people's property lines. Like, it's totally fucking with the pipes. Like,
well, I mean, I guess it's the idea. Well, what I don't understand. I mean, presumably the guy who's the old dude who is the the rapist who's the father. He obviously built that for her, unless she built it for herself, because he was pretty frail.
That's true. Some dads build tree houses, he builds cave networks.
And cages.
Cages.
Well, I mean, like, he definitely, because they were saying later on that he, like, was making babies with the babies. So, like, if you go down there, you can see, like, cages and, like bowls of, like, really old dog food type, like, dog bowls and shit. So the way that I see it is that, like, he started off with, like, maybe, like, a smaller area and then just kind of, like, naturally expanded from there, like, over, like, the course of those, like, 40 or 50 years that they said that was going on. My guess is it was going on for, like, 60 years, and then that monster is just 40 years old. I mean...
Yeah. The thing that I think we'll get to, which is, I think, one of the coolest... Well, I shouldn't say cool. It's one of the most interesting and telling scenes of the movie. But so I think now we're past the credit opening, the sort of the Barbarian comes on the screen. Now we're introduced to AJ. which I think we've already talked about, like the toxic masculinity and his just being a real shithead, and he's constantly thinking about his own career. Like I think on the phone with his like agent, he's like, "Oh, that fucking bitch!" Like that's his immediate reaction to this, as opposed to like, "Oh, I wonder." I mean, I guess that's probably the inevitable reaction for most men if they're accused of something like that. Not like, "Oh, I wonder what I can do to help them." It's immediately fuck them.
And also, what's interesting about AJ and his accountabilities is that he denies accountabilities to his agent and to his friend at the bar. But when he calls the girl hella drunk, he actually uses language that takes ownership. So he knows he's full of shit. He knows he's accountable. He knows he raped her.
Yeah, it's like his only moment of actual feelings is he's drunk and he sees that he's in a real hole now because of what he's done, and he's trying to have a moment of actual clarity.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
look at it. I think he's just fake as press on nails, but that's nice.
Yeah, he sure is. What was the other thing I was going to mention about him too? But yeah, the whole like his whole like trip to go out there where he's, he has a bunch of properties, and I guess he's for some reason, of course, one of those like there is no, like you said, like there is no move if he doesn't choose this house. But he clearly had like multiple properties, and he's going to this one out in the in the kind of a bad neighborhood in Detroit, and the only thing he's thinking of when he's there is the value of this property. Like there's no other consideration in his head. Like, he hasn't considered this person who he raped or whatever, any of that. It's just, oh, can I look up if a basement counts as square footage of my house? Which is one of the funniest scenes in the whole movie too.
The tape measure.
Yeah,
He's like, "Oh shit, bro, that's crazy. Look at this." Like,
I'd be so happy though if I stumbled upon a cave like that. I would actually be so juiced if I went to an Airbnb and found that. That'd be so fun.
yeah, just as long as there's no like murder room, I'd be okay with it. If it's like a wine cave or something.
Yeah, if it's just like, an old diamond mine. I don't know.
There's just like just like a room filled with treasure.
Yeah, I don't know. That'd be fun.
Yeah, and so we said this before, is that he is basically a landlord too. So not only is he a piece of shit rapist who doesn't take accountability, he's also a landlord.
and not even like the type of landlord that's like present and like fixes stuff every now and again, but like the type that doesn't even know that he owns the property.
Like, he bought the house like drunk one night, like, well, because it's in like knowing like the history of Detroit and how the city completely fell apart, and especially during the housing crisis, when houses were just all getting lost. I mean, these neighborhoods people were buying up property for nothing, pennies on the dollar. So presumably that's what he did. He bought a bunch of properties, and this is what capitalists and landlords and the like do. They buy up property when it's cheap, and then when that neighborhood gets nice again, they can jack up the price and kick out all the poor people.
And they even showed a juxtaposition of how nice that neighborhood was in the 80s. They did that flashback where that dude went to the grocery store.
Oh, I got to talk about this scene. This is like I think this is the coolest scene in the movie.
The flashback?
Well, maybe not the coolest, but I think that there's a lot of things I want to mention about it.
Okay.
Easily one of the funniest parts in the movie is they're like, "This place is going to shit. We got to get out of here." And like you look around and it looks fucking pretty all right. Like doesn't look like there's anything that could possibly be wrong involved there, except for like Frank. Like Frank seems like the only bad guy involved in that situation.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, the thing you said about like the pristine grass, the lawn, like the little houses in a row, perfect little suburb. And when the first line that I took note of when he gets into his car is he puts on the radio, and the person on the air, it's like a news report, and he says, Ronald Reagan inherited the worst economy in 50 years.
Yeah.
And it just like, it was such a it was so funny. And then because then you look at the neighborhood,
Uh,
and like that like doesn't square itself, right? Like you have this actual somewhat of a middle class or working class neighborhood that's nice. People can actually afford the house, you know.
then Reaganomics happened, and Barbarian was able to be written.
Yeah, I mean, and then he goes to the store, and like the way he's driving around, and in the store, it's all very, you know, neat. And he's like buying like the Frank's buying all this stuff for like a home birth of one of his, you know, women's children who he had raped, and the woman's just like helping him buy, you know, get all the stuff, and it's like that scene made me very uncomfortable too. Like he's
He's
I
an
don't know.
uncomfortable dude. And just his vibe is complete sourness. Good actor though.
Yes, yeah, that guy. And then the thing that sort of caught me by surprise is he was setting up his next victim, and it's like an endless parade of victims, clearly, because they had all those videotapes down there, and he like goes into a house, poses. And that's like another thing too. Like in 1980, you would just let some random like utility person into your house just to walk
Yeah,
around.
she's
Like I am not letting anyone into my fucking house, or
she didn't
I
think.
play.
But did you notice in the car? So he's in the car watching her, right? Like his next victim. And I don't know if I'm actually accurate in this, but so it said that it was Reagan, right? And then there was a commercial playing on the radio, and it was all like, "Used cars, even if you have bad credit." Wasn't credit scores in like 86 or 7 or something?
Oh, it's funny. I took note of that exact same commercial because I was thinking about how at that time it was the expansion of people like using credit cards to buy a bunch of stuff. Like that was the thing they were pushing. But I don't know. Like, did they have credit yet?
That's what I'm saying. I think I found an error, and I'm like excited about it, but I don't actually know if I found an accurate error, if I'm just being.
I can try to look that up right now. I have my computer open.
Do it.
Yeah,
dude.
we got to do real time fact checking. And though for people who I'm going to probably cut this part, but this is going on live, so we can fact check in real time I guess it's always being recorded live.
Okay, so it says like the FICO credit score was in 1989.
Oh, shit.
We found a plot hole.
Not a plot. But was there some way that they could check your credit as early as 1980?
But
I guess
credit
not.
scores weren't a thing, I don't think.
Right. Okay. So there must have been. I guess they could like call your bank and like see if you had money. I don't know. I was negative 2 years old that year. I wasn't born yet.
I just thought that was fun.
Funny because I didn't think of it as being like an incorrect thing. I thought of it as just like an interesting thing. So, okay, so here we go. I found another little thing. So it says apparently in like the mid 70s, there was something called like the 1970 Fair Credit Reporting Act and the Equal Credit Opportunity Act to discourage
I'll be right back.
Unfair credit reporting. So it sounds like the FICO wasn't invented till later, but it seems like they did have some way to.
Like there was a forerunner type of.
Yeah, it seems like that FICO and Equifax were like the modern credit scores, or like the most, the newer version of it. But it seems like at the time, I think we've I'm gonna have to contact the director and see like, oh, did you understand you misrepresented credit scores in this movie?
Oh, you sending a letter?
They're like, no. I actually did my research on this. Like,
yeah. So I was just saying,
took 3 hours in post production to get settled. All right, like I know my.
So apparently there wasn't official credit scores, but there was acts that had been passed that would create some kind of fair competition. So Equifax has been around since 1956. And FICO had been working to create the standardized thing in the 80s. So it seems like it wasn't like official, but they had something going on. So we're going to put this one as partially true on our fact.
Yeah. I'm happy.
Partial true. But yeah, that whole scene like was super weird. And you then see, which is I think also one of those super cool things, he's walking down the hallway in his house. it's super 80s looking inside, or 70s even. And then you flash back to the 4 and you have that same hallway. So I really did like how they brought in that flashback to give you like context to the monster that he was. That he created the monster, in fact, right?
He's Frankenstein.
And his name is Frank.
That's funny.
Well, no, he's not Frankenstein. He's yeah.
The doctor is Frankenstein.
What's that?
The monster.
Yeah, Frankenstein. He's Frankenstein. Yeah, that's one of those common things that people always get wrong, that they say Frankenstein is the monster. And it's like, no.
Yeah,
Frankenstein was the
Frank
dude.
Frankenstein. He made the monster, just not the same way. Different methodology.
I mean, there is a Frankenstein movie where Frankenstein like swaps brains or some shit with Frankenstein, with like the monster. So he is like the monster and Frankenstein at the same time.
What movie is that?
It's a comedy. I forgot what it's the same guy that was was Willy Wonka in the first one.
Oh, it's Frankenstein.
Oh wait, are we talking about Young Frankenstein?
Young Frankenstein. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. I was like, I've seen this movie.
Normal. Yeah. Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks is in that with the eyes. He plays Igor, doesn't he?
Yeah.
No,
Yes.
Or is he both?
I think it might be both. I don't know.
It's immaterial, inconsequential.
Yes. But yeah. So like, and the other thing too that is other interesting, again, maybe just a thing about Frank's character is he's clearly, maybe he built that tunnel down there to like bury all of the people he obviously then would have to kill, presumably, right? Because if has all these women and babies and they have them, and all in this this incest tree, he's killing a bunch of people too.
Yeah, maybe he wants to bury his secrets down in his catacombs. I didn't think of that as a burial temple.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it seemed like he probably had more than one like woman at a time.
Right.
At least like when you first go down there and you see that there's like the cages and everything.
Yeah. It implies he has multiple children in cages or multiple victims in cages.
Yeah. So I can't see like him being able to, I guess, record him, doing these heinous acts, and then also having like a small section of that corner where like dedicated to like 7 different people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and the other thing there's this made me think of 2 things I hadn't before. Well, one, I think we should maybe like discuss a little bit like the mother character, but before that, I was thinking how in the part where AJ is down in the tunnels and he kind of escapes and he then stumbles upon Frank like on his before he kills himself, the mother won't go down there. She seems to be afraid of him, and it's interesting because you think that she would want to kill him, but doesn't. And I don't know. It's like it's hard to analyze her character, being like you don't really know much other than her like motherly instinct. But it's it's super weird.
Wait, what?
It's possible that there were like other like that monster, the mother had like other siblings that tried to do that and then they got killed or something. Because Frank does have a gun,
right?
So I don't know.
Her whole like, and clearly he has to get all of these. She's presumably not out getting supplies, I guess, like the milk and all these supplies, but she clearly has supplies,
Yeah, where's she?
He's unable to go anywhere. So is she like out? She out just like going and like stealing shit while?
Oh, she comes out at night. That homeless dude said that. Maybe she hits the market.
Yo, you got. Can I get a 12-pack of condoms and a mason jar and some milk, maybe? I'll poke a little hole in the condom. I'll put it on top. I'll give it to my babies. Like,
Like,
Well, yeah, like the bottle was really kind of creepy too. Like, I mean, geez.
why was it shiny? The top didn't have to be shiny. They didn't have to do that, but they did it.
Oh, and the
Yeah,
other
I swear that bottle top was a condom just wrapped around a mason jar.
It was,
oh.
it was too shiny.
And the other thing that like some of the creepy things in this movie for me, like even the most, was that scene where they're AJ and Tess are in this cage, and she puts the bottle down, and AJ won't drink it, and there's like hair on the like the nipple of it. And it was like I was like that was like the most I was like completely just gagging. It was.
I hated everything about that scene.
Yeah, I was horrified because I was like I would be screwed because I'm allergic to like milk. I was like I'm gonna die like no matter what, if I'm then in that situation I'm fucking dead. What am I gonna do? Drink the milk? Like have like go into like fucking shock, not be able to breathe, or huh?
Do you go anaphylaxis from milk, or do you just get diarrhea?
Anaphylaxis. So like I would be dead like if I did not have it. I'd be totally screwed.
Dude, your whole life is Russian roulette. What the fuck? That's crazy.
So I think the other couple things I want to mention, we haven't talked about. We talked about earlier how like Tess isn't believed by Keith, and I think even AJ like doesn't seem to like believe her or trust her, despite the fact that she's also captured in this dungeon. But then we have the two scenes where she escapes and she meets the cops for the first time. She runs down the street and she sees the cops and she tells them she's kidnapped. I posted a video about this earlier, this scene, and they're like, "Don't touch the car, ma'am," and like they just assume she's crazy. And it's just like the cops don't care. Like they know what's going on in this neighborhood is the impression I got. Like they know some fucked up shit is happening around here and they don't want any part of it.
That's how cops act in those areas. I mean, they always assume they've seen it all for one, and they always assume that everyone's a crackhead. Basically.
Yeah. I mean, she's very dirty. She's clearly talking really fast and you know needs help, and they don't give a shit.
What's funny though is that she does not seem high at all, not even a little bit. I feel like the cops might have been more inclined to believe her, but part of me is like, nah, they would have behaved just that way.
Yeah, and then they do go down to the house, and I think the funny line in that scene is the cop says like, "Oh, you know, the only crime I see here is that you broke the window to this dilapidated shithole house in this dilapidated shithole neighborhood." Like, do they even like? Why would they give a shit?
He didn't even actually care about the window. He didn't.
Right, of course.
Semblance of emotion until she called him a name. That's when he actually cared.
And then she threatens to take him down. And the only reason they don't like haul her away, I think, is that there's like a shooting somewhere else, and like that's more exciting for the cops to go check out.
Yeah, all units down.
Yeah, the cops don't believe her. You know, that's like the constant theme too, I think, is not just when it comes to sexual women who are victims of sexual assault and harassment and they're not being believed. Like that thread goes across to cops not believing anything that you say, you know, when you need some kind of help. You know, I think they pulled that strand nicely throughout the movie.
They did. And only in like 2 scenes too with the cops. And they portrayed that really well in just 2 scenes.
Well, she also calls the police and they basically, I feel like they don't seem like they're going to send anyone.
They don't have any available units.
Yeah, they're literally like, "Sorry, we have no available units." And she's like, "What? So nobody's coming?" And they're like, "We have no available units. Nobody's coming, man." Like, sorry.
That happens all the time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but like if it was a white neighborhood or a nice part of town, like that's where all the cops are, I guess.
They'd be calling motherfuckers from all over the place. They'd be like, "Oh, we have no available units. We better call on SEAL Team 6 here real quick."
Yeah. I mean, like the theme of, you know, just like the, you know, I think this goes to Frank's character, you know, in the 80s from when the flashback was, and all of this is just like that overtone of just like the white supremacy of the town. I mean, like the Reagan basically destroyed that town. If you think about it, in a sense, like manufacturing was dying, he did nothing to save it, and that killed Detroit in some part. And then it's almost like Reagan created this monster as much as Frank did.
Yeah, Reaganomics, and then Barbarian was written.
Yeah. But I think the sort of like the very kind of final scene of this movie, or the final scenes, is when he goes back to save AJ, gets him out of the house, and they come across that same homeless person that they had found earlier, and they kind of take refuge with him. And I thought, like, one of the funniest scenes, and like I feel like and this is one where I knew it was coming, where he's like, oh yeah, like the she's never come here in this water tower where I'm hanging out all the time, and then she like just literally like breaks through a solid wall, and just
yeah, it's like the fucking Kool-Aid man. Oh yeah.
And he's like, he said specifically, she ain't never come in this motherfucker, and cut off. So comedically genius.
Yeah. And then immediately following that is you have AJ again, like only thinking of himself. He knows that. Oh, I guess we also skipped over the pack where he shoots her, thinking that it's the mother
coming too.
I honestly thought that was where the movie was going to end at first, because I wasn't really paying attention to time. I thought that he just like shot her. She hit the mother with the car. Frank shot himself, and then it was just going to like end with like this dude just leaving. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like just leaves her for dead, leaves the woman for dead, steals her car, and just bounces. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good, like, I think that was probably intentional to give you the sense of like there might be closure here.
What with the shooting?
Yeah, well, I mean that's what you just said, is that he shoots Tess, and then like he easily could have just run away, and that could have been it. But it continues. He like she makes it out of the house, and he helps her. And that's the thing too, is that AJ is constantly like bragging several times about how he's like, oh yeah, I came back for you, I helped you. Like he so desperately wants to be seen as like the good guy, like Keith, but he's just a piece of shit.
He really is terrible.
Yeah, well, there's like the moment, I think, at some point where it's kind of like it seems like he's trying to like be better, but like when push comes to shove, like later on, obviously he like decides that like being an asshole is just his move.
Yeah, he like, I think this. I mean, you're probably referring to like the very last scene. They're on top of the water tower, and he knows that there's like this connection between the mother and Tess, and if he pushes Tess off the roof, she will jump after him, killing two birds with one stone, literally, or is his goal. And because she's somehow superhuman, like that's another thing about this movie that we just kind of skipped over, and you just kind of accept it as being a horror movie, and some aspect of it is somehow like all the inbreeding gave her super strength.
I complained about that constantly to my boyfriend the entire time, because it was really annoying.
Why is that? Yeah.
They broke the car. Cars are made of steel. It broke a steel. So if an engine is compromised, that means the steel frame was compromised, and that shit didn't kill her. I'm sorry.
Yeah, like didn't even like pierce her flesh.
Well, it damaged the car. So if the collision can damage a steel frame, I'm sorry, you can be incest 10 decades over. You're not more strong than me.
Yeah, maybe there's some like toxic sludge down in that cave down there that gave her some powers.
Maybe.
Like she's like the toxic Avenger.
Okay, I'll try and abide it, but it's hard for me. But I'll do it for you.
No, I hear you. I constantly was thinking,
mama.
Yeah, teenage mutant mama. Oh man. But yeah, and then so I was saying, so she pushes him off the thing, and he's like, oh, and then he again sees that Tess like also survives. Like she's also gets shot, falls off a roof, and she survives. And for his troubles of trying to kill both of them, and like maybe the goriest scene of the whole movie is when the mother just gouges his like face and just destroys, like her strength is just unmatched.
I like the pussy color. That
Yeah.
might be a little macabre.
It was like it looked like like if you had like a baked potato in your hand, you like smushed it.
Yeah, that's exactly what it looked like. And you
It
put
looked yeah, it seemed like just like milky baked potato.
yeah, with a little bit of pink. It's so cute.
Yeah. And I think I don't know if I was talking about it with one of you, but I think the other thing that I noticed after when, he's dead and then, the mother wants Tess to like go back with her and she sees the gun. I feel like she knew at that moment that she was going to die. Like it was finally going to be, her misery and pain would be ended and like seemed like okay with it.
Well, she had her baby. She was happy. That's all she cared about was Tess. Cute,
Oh,
sweet.
so like she finally had someone to care for after all this time.
Yeah, I'm saying that she didn't care that she was gonna die because she's with her baby and it's all,
Yeah, purpose fulfilled, I guess.
she accepts because they're together.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, the main theme definitely seemed like a lot of like abused people sort of taking back their power to a certain extent, where you can kind of see that like even though the mother doesn't really get to kill Frank, she gets to kill like almost like a proto Frank, if you know what I mean, and AJ.
Oh yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like it's
And
almost like she
then
saw
yeah.
like him in her, him in him.
That's a good
Yeah,
pair.
and then you can sort of see that like Tess comes into it kind of like being sort of easily pushed around where like obviously she doesn't want to come inside, but Keith is like, yeah, come inside, it's fine. And then she's like, whatever, fine. And then she comes inside. She doesn't want to drink. She ends up drinking anyways because he kind of like pushes her into doing it. She wants to go home. He goes down into the basement. She follows him, with AJ, all sorts of stuff where like by the end of it, it's almost like she's able to sort of take back her own power and be like the one that actually ends things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, yeah, I can definitely see that. What was I going to mention? Oh, the other crazy thing is I saw the actor who played the mother. I saw this video where it's this guy named Matthew Patrick Davis.
Guy?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a guy, and they show like I saw a video like where they're putting on all of his, makeup and everything, and he's not really like he's been in a bunch of things like sporadically here and there, and I think he's done some writing, but it seemed like kind of like an unknown actor. I wonder he might have some connection to the director of the movie potentially. I think was it Zach Krieger, I think is the director and writer of it. So it kind of surprised me, seeing the person who played. Anytime there's like a monster, when you kind of see who's underlying that, it's interesting.
I actually thought the actor that was Frank did the like the mother because of like the amount of inbreeding that would have had to happen. I feel like it would have like naturally just started to look more and more like Frank. So like when I found out that it actually like was a guy that was the mother, I was like, yeah, that makes sense because you would kind of like want like a more like I guess masculine bone structure. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the guy who plays Frank, I've seen him in a couple of things. I don't think he's like a big actor. I think he was in one of the Hannibal movies, I think, is the one I saw him in, and a few other things here and there. But I don't know. Did you have any? I think the only kind of topic that we kind of talked about all the different things, like with the, the urban, like maybe I didn't mention it this way, but you can kind of see like the crumbling of that, the city within Detroit, and kind of how it, led to all of these other issues within, cities and suburban life. And so the housing crisis and landlords and all of these different things. I think it's a kind of a crafty inclusion of all of those themes by the director and writer.
I agree. They help make it a well-rounded picture and experience because like the poverty and the whole like this whole atrocity being able to take place, not like the movie itself, but like what happened with the mother and Frank, like this whole abuse story transpiring over all these years in a community and no one did anything,
Yeah, well, you know what I was just thinking when you said that, So remember in that flashback scene, like the neighbor is deciding to move because they want to move before it's too late. I mean, I was thinking about this now. This is kind of a non sequitur, but I wonder if it's because at that moment, you're starting to see the I don't know when like the big layoffs and things within like Ford Motor Company was. Perhaps jobs were dwindling, and that's why the people nearby were trying to sell. Or maybe they knew that Frank was some kind of monster, although they probably wouldn't be just chatting with him if they knew.
Yeah.
I feel like the individualistic nuclear family model allows those sorts of things to take place. Because if it was more communal and more like we're all like mi casa, su casa, and shit like that, that he wouldn't have been able to hide it. Like it would have been weird that he's not with the fam. It's weird he's not in the community. It's weird he's not on the block. So I mean, I feel like the nuclear family paradigm and the individualism that runs rampant in our silly little society, boom.
Yeah. But do you think that his neighbors would have found it peculiar that he wasn't, married?
Yeah, I do.
Doesn't have kids. They
Yeah.
probably would have found that strange, right?
I think so. Yeah.
And presumably he's bringing back like all these supplies and things he's constantly needing for his horrible activities. I feel like if you're a neighbor, which I picture like the 80s of these people in their front lawns mowing and having beer with their neighbor, like you feel like you notice these kind of things,
I think it
feel like-
takes place in a time period where people were a little bit more focused on their own like finances, where they might have taken kind of like a blind eye to it with like stagflation and the recent election and all sorts of other shit, where they're like more focused on like more their own issues, especially if they're talking like the only time that you see Frank talk to somebody who I presumed at first was like probably one of his like bigger friends, because it seemed like one of Frank's like only real emotions other than like, fear / shame in that like last like suicide scene was kind of like him seeming like sort of sad that like his friend was leaving the neighborhood. Know what I mean?
Yeah, like even though he was he was still a monster, it like somehow kept him grounded in this reality.
I mean, clearly he already had somebody there, because then he walks into the house and then there's somebody screaming downstairs.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and he's like literally just coming home from like setting up his next operation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Frank's not a good dude.
Frank is pretty bad. And he's so real too. He's not like the mama monster. He's like more like AJ, more real life.
And it's also, I feel like the era too. I wanted to do a movie where there's like a serial killer, just because like generally you don't really see serial killers as much anymore. Like in the age of like DNA, like the era of there being all these kind of serial killers was like a very 80s thing.
We had one in Stockton just this year. He's still at large.
Oh shit! Well, I stand corrected. I guess maybe there's less focus on them. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the media sort of like was like really, well, people at least were talking a lot of shit about like the media, like kind of like propping up a bunch of these serial killers to kind of like almost like get other serial killers to pop up to get attention, because obviously almost all of these like serial killers and then the mass shooters are always like lonely white dudes.
Yeah.
But now we've kind of shifted to just focusing on lonely white dudes who do mass murders instead of serial killing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they've changed their modus operandum.
There's also like definitely enough mass shootings going on where they can kind of cover one every week or so, where like the serial killing, they would be able to like follow a string of murders that might be connected over the course of like a year or so. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. But any final notes or thoughts from either of you?
They played the Ronettes on the outro. That was tight.
Yes.
Yeah. Ronettes always kick ass. That's my final thought.
That's your final thought? That's fair. Anything else? Anyone? I think I went through all I feel like I exhausted my notes here.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would have to say is that the homeless guy kind of had maybe the worst possible approach to getting her out of that house in his first scene. And I was like, oh, there's like Nazis in this neighborhood. Okay. Like at first when I saw it happening where it was like, get out of our house, girl, I was like, oh shit, there's like the Klan up here or some shit. That's crazy. And then I found out that it was like not a white guy at all. And I was like, oh fuck, all right.
Yeah, his approach was like
Interesting approach, bro.
Yeah, he's like just shouting and yelling at her in a neighborhood that she had just been told the neighborhood was bad.
Yeah.
So she's like, oh fuck, there's someone's running at me. When maybe if he's like, hey, excuse me, ma'am, there's a crazy monster in the basement. Excuse me. Yeah.
I think he's crazy still though. Like, how do you convince someone of crazy shit like that?
Well, that's the thing. Like, that's how, like, Keith was not convinced. I mean, she wasn't aware of the monster, but she knew something was up. But like,
her concerns were valid. A camera in a bed in a seedy basement is real life. That's totally believable.
Yeah, and it wasn't like there was anything set up. Like there wasn't like a couch. It was just like this guy's like running his own radio show downstairs. Like there's a bloody like handprint on the fucking wall.
Yeah, and also that weird string you pull to open the door. Like that was fucked up.
That shit was kind of tight though. I want something like that.
Yeah, like that's how he was hiding his whole setup, right? Like he has this door you can't open unless you find the secret string.
Secret layers are tight.
Yeah. As long as the secret layer is not hiding that and it's hiding like
that's my secret layer.
Yeah, as long as it's not an incest dungeon.
No, I want to like build Legos and like hang out.
Yeah, or if like you're like planning the overthrow of capitalism down there, that's okay.
Yeah, now like make memes and shit down there, but it's still secret layer.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't think I have anything else, but again, Comrade Cutiepie, Jolly Leftist, thank you for talking about this horror movie. It's been great.
I had fun.
Yeah, thank you for recommending it to me because I was like definitely not, I'm not into horror movies at all. Like I'll put like Jaws scared the shit out of me when I saw it in theaters again. Like I went to the theaters and I saw it and it was like bottom. I dead ass like closed my eyes and covered my face.
Aww.
And like so the scene where like the shark slowly gets onto the screen. Yes. I had my eyes closed. All right. So like all I heard was da-da-da, and I opened my eyes for a second. And I just saw the shark like coming at me. I was like, ah!
Yeah. I mean, I think when that movie came out originally, people were probably shitting themselves in the theater with all that, especially given the time frame.
That's what every boomer you ever meet ever says. I was too scared to go in the pool. Yeah. Heard that one before. I know.
Yeah. No, I think this is a horror movie in general. I mean, I definitely recommend it to anyone who's into horror movies. But it's not like the same. It's like I feel like it's like genre expanding in a sense. It's not like a slasher movie or a gory film. It has like it's like more of an art piece.
It felt a lot more like a thriller than it did really like a horror movie.
Yeah, I mean we're in like the golden age, the new golden age of horror film. So
I love it.
At least in my opinion,
I think it's great. More layers.
Yes. Bringing back the layers to the horror genre. Anyway, all right. Well, so everyone out there, you can listen to future episodes of Left of the Projector on your platform of choice. And thank you both again.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yep.
Thank you.